Hello and welcome to Kitty Talks. We share inspirational life stories that empower you to create yours. And today I have a very inspirational woman with me. She is full of wisdom. I've been following her on Instagram recently, and I love the way she takes spiritual concepts and makes them really, really groundbreaking and down to earth and bite size. Today I have with me Jody Shield. She is a wellness entrepreneur, a success coach, an author, and also an inspirational speaker. So Jody, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
And we've just had a little chat before we started, and we've gone straight into all these wonderful topics. So I know today you're going to hear some real wisdom from this woman. But Jody, do you mind sharing with my audience who you are and what you do in the world?
Of course. So I'm Jody, and I am a coach, a wellness author, inspirational speaker, and an entrepreneur. And I think it's so weird when you say entrepreneur, because for most people, when you say the word entrepreneur, they immediately think about Richard Branson. And it's actually not. I feel like entrepreneurialism is can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Hello?
Oh, you can't hear me.
Oh, okay. So you've just frozen.
Okay. That's not good.
Oh, hello.
Oh, I can hear you and I can see you. 1 second. That's weird.
Don't worry. Well, I can see you, but I can't hear you. There's a delay.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I'm just gonna. Let's do.
Cool.
Sorry. I'm just going to try a different one.
Don't worry. I mean, I could keep talking. I just want to make sure that you've got it all.
Yeah, I've definitely got it. So, yeah, by all means, carry on. I can cut that bit out.
Carry on. Okay. Shall I just keep going?
Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so I am a success coach and an author and a speaker and an entrepreneur. And it's so funny when I say the word entrepreneur, because when I talk about being an entrepreneur, most people's immediate reaction is to think about Richard Branson. And of course, there's a kind of a new wave of entrepreneurs coming through. And I think there are lots of entrepreneurs in the social media space, and there are lots of entrepreneurs outside the social media space. And for me, entrepreneurialism is it's a mindset, it's a behavior, it's playful, it's fun, it's charismatic, it's curious. It's a way of being out in the world and wanting to kind of open doors and know people. And I think in the world of coaching, it's such an important quality to have. And so for me, entrepreneurialism means just that. It means, being flexible, dynamic, and it's that state of mind. But it's also about having, I guess, products and services that are amazing, but start off as a bit of an experiment, really. I never really start something and think, right, I know exactly what this is going to be. I know exactly how it's going to roll. I kind of just put stuff out there. And we talked before we started recording, Kitty, about, being really tuned in and being in the flow and being in, and actually one of my coaching programs is called Get in Flow. And it's like really being in alignment. And it's that alignment piece that's so important. And, so when I create things, I co-create with, I co-create with the energy of what it's going to be. I co-create with the spirit of my company. I'm very much about blending the world of business with the world of spirituality and well-being. and taking care of ourselves in that process.
Beautiful. And I think it's a really good point, because I think you're right. I think we have a label, don't we, when we think of an entrepreneur, but actually I think there's more and more people becoming intuitive entrepreneurs. Is exactly what you described, because you're kind of following what your intuition is telling you. And actually there's no necessarily a beaten path to follow, because it's literally completely unique to us. And so really our guide in that journey is obviously ourselves. So can you take me back about how you started this journey? Because I know obviously, about your kind of, take us to before the Peru episode. Take us to what it was like in your corporate when you knew you needed to make a change, but you didn't know what to do.
Okay, so this is going back a good few years, really. I think I started feeling a little bit restless in about 2009, I would say. And I started really feeling the pressure. I was working in advertising. I was a director. And I started really, feeling the pressure, and kind of there were so many pieces of work that we were creating that weren't really being seen or being realized. And it felt like a game was going on between clients and us. And it just, and it just felt like a really strange environment. And it was very high pressure, very high stress. And it was just really, toxic in a way, I suppose. And, so that's how I was feeling. And obviously I can, one can look back in hindsight and know exactly what's going on in that moment. But let me go back to where I was without knowing anything about myself and about, any awareness about who I was and what was actually going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I was kind of in this environment and I was feeling, pressured. And I kind of had a realization, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be anything other than this. Like, I am not trained in anything else. How am I gonna, how am I gonna survive if I have to work in this organization or one like it for, the next 10 years? Like, what is going to happen? How am I going to survive? And that thought just really freaked me out. And I was like, wow, like this is it's like prison. I feel so trapped in here. I really feel trapped and suffocated. And so that was kind of the invitation, really, to kind of, I knew that I needed to, I guess, do something about it. So I then decided to go traveling, because I was like, right, well, I didn't do any traveling when I left uni, and I feel like I missed out a little bit, and I haven't really seen the world. So I decided that I would go traveling. So I booked a one-way ticket, and I went off and decided to go on a trip, to South America, with a very kind of, I don't know, courageous heart, and the intention that I wanted to change, and I wanted to figure out more about myself, and I wanted to understand, what I really wanted. And that was that was all I had, really. So that was it. So that was me. Then I just went on this very big journey. It was nearly a year of traveling, actually, around South America. Every country offered something very different to me. And then I ended up, so this is 7.5 years ago, is it? I ended up kind of going into Peru, into the jungle, and I guess diving headfirst into something I knew nothing about, which was a plant medicine ceremony. So that's really what I ended up doing. That was the big catalyst for my transformation, was going into the jungle, going into the ceremony, doing it 7 times, which is crazy. And
wow.
Back then, no one was talking about ayahuasca. It was like not a thing that people did. And so I ended up going into that experience and doing it, into a 12-day experience, immersion, and doing it 7 times. So
wow.
I didn't know anything about it before I went in there. I didn't have anything to compare it to. No one had told me anything about it. I just jumped in and turned up, and that was that. Yeah, that was that. Basically, that was the whole catalyst to everything, because what I went through during that 12-day process was it was completely transformational, completely detoxifying. It really like transformed me on so many levels. So from kind of having an eating disorder when I went into the jungle, I completely healed myself from bulimia. I also healed myself from, like the drink and everything else that goes with that, goes out with partying. All that addiction was gone as well. And I stopped eating meat for about 5 years after that. So, it really transformed me from the inside out very, very deeply.
And
so
how
I
does
guess
it work?
while I was there, the indigenous people,
how does it work? So like do you get to see yourself in a different kind of place? Like how does it heal you? How does it, like if you look back at it now and in hindsight, like did you get to sort of see things in a different way or?
Yes. So the ayahuasca is a hallucinogenic psychoactive brew. It is a plant medicine, and you drink it in ceremony, and then you basically it kind of puts you into a place, a brainwave, a state of consciousness where you are able to face some really hidden memories and experiences that you have kind of gone through and then sealed off. So you basically get to kind of heal through having realizations from the memories and the experiences that you've been through, and the stuff that's been really buried down in the subconscious. That all of that kind of is shown to you, but it comes out in a specific order. So, many of your listeners will know this already, but there's an order. We can't just heal everything at the same time. There's a divine order. So what that means basically is that, there are layers that are unraveled at the perfect time, in the perfect order, based on, your life design, the purpose of who you are, the journey that you're going through, the big life assignments that you're going through. So basically that is, that's kind of how it works. So you can't kind of show up saying, right, I'm ready to work on my addiction today. Can we please do it? I'm ready, because you'll be shown what you need to be shown. And so that's the very powerful invitation. It's all about surrendering. It's all about letting go. It's all about completely falling into the experience, giving in, and, allowing that, I guess you want to call it universal intervention, or you want to call it plant spirit, to really support you and trust that you're going to be supported, which is a big one for most people. So many of us struggle with feeling supported, and so the invitation to kind of trust that some unknown force is going to support you it's a huge invitation. But when you choose to accept it and say yes, then so much can happen. But there's also the flip side of that. If you come into the experience very stuck in your mind and very wanting to control, and really hang on, then of course the experience that you'll get will be a fight for the whole session. You'll be fighting with your mind, you'll be fighting with your ego, you'll be fighting yourself. And so many people go in with that experience. So I just want to say at this point, Kitty, if you don't mind, to everybody, I'm sure many people listening to your podcast have heard about ayahuasca, or they've heard whispers about plant medicine, or their friends done it in a place in London or whatever. I mean, it's the conversations about ayahuasca are really prevalent now in our world. And my advice to everybody is, if it calls you and you feel yourself called to go and work with the plant, then brilliant. But it's not really something to do when you think it's the right thing to do, or someone has told you to go and do it. Like it's something to be really deeply respected and honored. It's not something to think that you can go and take recreationally in a way that you might have taken, party drugs before. It's a very transformational experience. And I know that you know that, Kitty, but just for the benefit of everyone listening, when I share things like it completely cured me from bulimia, which it did, that's my story. It might not be your story. So I think when the book was coming out, I had to be very careful about, knowing that, people listen to me on podcasts, people follow me on Instagram. I get, there are young girls following me on Instagram. And so my responsibility is really, is that, amazing if it feels good for you and you're really struggling, and you've done some research. If you're a researcher, do some research or speak to people about it. But ultimately the decision has to come from you. It has to be a full body yes. Yeah, I would say.
The other thing I think, just to build on what you're saying, Jodie, is it's really important, like if you do some type of ceremonial plant medicine, that you're doing it with the right people in the right environment, with the people that know and respect the plant, So, I personally haven't done it, but a very good friend of mine, where he takes people to the right indigenous tribes to do the plant medicine, because it can, like you said, it gets almost bastardized coming to the West. And, you might find yourself doing a ceremony, and if it's not set up correctly, it won't have the right effect and it's not safe. So, for you were in Peru, you were with people who knew and respected and trusted it. It was a great environment. But I think that's also something to make our listeners aware, that it's important who you do it with, basically.
Absolutely, for sure.
But you came home, you went away one person, you came back literally a different person by the sounds of things. So what happened when you landed back in England?
Wow. So I very, very luckily, after I'd done the ayahuasca, I came out of that experience, and I was able to have 4 months of traveling still. So it was effectively 4 months of integration time, which is really important, especially going through an experience and doing it as many times as I did, and having the most intensive experience. Like most people will take it twice, 3 times. I did it 7 times. And luckily I didn't really understand, it wasn't, no one else had done it at that point in my friend group or anyone around me. So I didn't really understand the the enormity of what I'd just been through, which is probably a good thing. So I came out of there, and I had 4 months to integrate. I traveled around Ecuador, and I traveled around Peru, and I traveled around various other places. And I think then when it was time to come home, I think I had a little seed, or a few seeds of hope inside, because the indigenous people who were hosting the ceremony. So I did it at a place called the Temple of the Way of Light. You can pop it in your show notes if you want to, but the Temple of the Way of Light is a great center that I would highly recommend. And you basically work with 20 members of an indigenous tribe called the Shipibo tribes, the Shipibo people. And what was very unique about where I went to do it is that out of that, no, hang on, 12, there were 12 of them. Out of the 12, 8 of them were women and the rest were men. So it was an amazingly, it was an amazing experience, because the divine feminine, the feminine was very heavily represented. So we had 8 women and then the rest were men. So it was a very, very special experience. And when I was there, they made a point of telling me, obviously in their native language, which then had to be translated for me. But they made a point of telling me that I was going to be a doctor. They said, they called me a doctor. They said that I would help many, many people. And, clearly when I'm in that experience, my ego immediately jumps in and starts saying, well, Jody, you're not academic enough to go back to uni for 7 years. Come on, you can't be a doctor. Like, come on. And obviously through the translations, I then realized that it was another kind of doctor. It was something different. So I think because I've been told that, and because it had resonated so deeply, because, you know this, Kitty, but what happened is, my soul has started to speak to me and really like tell me what was going to be unfolding in my life. And so when they reflected that back at me, that was so deeply resonant. So I was like, okay, I know that's happening. So when you have like, when you have such a profound experience like that and you heal addiction, like 3 types of addiction, and you come out of that and you're a completely different person, and you are like just completely transformed, and you have your life purpose as well, not in so many words, but you have the sense that it's there. It's like, right, God, I feel like this is great. So, there's a little small case of a few things that I need to overcome, but ultimately I know where I'm going in a weird kind of way.
Gives you faith.
So that was it. So yeah, when I came out of there, I was like, right, this is it. I know this. I know what I've got to do. I've got this. Yeah. So I came back to London, and I did, obviously, with all of these things, you don't know how it's going to work. And I was, looking back at myself then, I think I was quite intuitive then, because, I didn't particularly have a spiritual practice before I went in the jungle. I didn't ever meditate. I learned how to do all of that when I was in the jungle. And so when I came out, I remember like feeling that, you know what, there's no rush in the how. I was like, I don't need to have it figured out, which I mean, for most people that freaks
everybody
them out.
Wants to know, yeah.
Right. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, I'm not ready just yet. And that's cool. And so I went back into advertising, but I worked for smaller entrepreneurial agencies and thinking that would be a bit different. It wasn't different. And I ended up in some really interesting, like, dynamics with very interesting people, like interesting in inverted commas, people that were teaching me a lot of stuff and had a lot of gifts for me, right? In a negative way, but a positive way as well. Anyway, and then I was at this like latter agency, and it was really great. Like, people would have really wanted that job that I had, because it was like with amazing, like the CEO of Publicis, the CEO of like these global agencies that come together to create this agency that was young and entrepreneurial and fresh and different, right? So yeah, most people would have dreamed to have been in that job.
But your consciousness had shifted out of it,
yeah,
hadn't it? Totally.
It was. And it was really funny because I showed up in this job, and you know what I did on my lunch break, because I taught people tapping. I was just like, right, everyone, we're going to do tapping. We're going to do tapping. We're going to do breathing. We're going to do meditation. Like, I was just happy to teach people stuff. And in the meantime, I'm moonlighting, going on all these workshops and courses, learning EFT, learning, like, I think I learned to be a Reiki master. That was the first thing. Everyone tends to do this, don't they?
Yeah.
Reiki master, then the EFT stuff. Then I trained with this amazing, my spiritual teacher, who's still an amazing teacher to me now. And I trained in spiritual healing as well, and meditation. And then I had some great tools and techniques. And then this one day, this Eat, Pray, Love moment happened. And this inner voice really told me, now's the time, quit your job. And I listened. I just sat up and I was like, okay. And I listened, and I went and I quit my job. And I worked 3 months. And then I would just like dived in at the deep end with nothing to go to. I was buying a flat at the time with my now husband. We were buying a flat together, and I had nothing to, I had nothing. I had like no savings, no clue. But this is, and I just want to really inspire your listeners with this. This is how it started for me. And it's funny, when I'm coaching people now, this is kind of how it starts as well. I was like, right, I'm going to build a website, because I knew that if I built a website, that would kick me into shape to figure out who I was, what I offered, and I was like, well, I've got these skills, so I can help people process trauma, and I can help people in a therapeutic way. And so I'm just going to build a website. So I built a website while I was away, and I came back and I was like, right, I'm going to start seeing clients. I had no idea how it was going to happen, nothing. So I can't even remember how it happened, but I promise you, within like a couple of months, I had a full clinic. And I was like, what? And yes, we did. It's funny now looking back on it. I was very, it's very naive. I just didn't know what was going on. I was just like, and I had my best financial year. I mean, obviously now it's a different story, but up until like, I don't know, a year or so ago, no, about 2 years ago, I had my best financial year in year one. And this happens a lot with entrepreneurs and startups, right? You have an amazing first year, but you don't understand that you have to save for tax or for, you know, for reinvestment in the year after. And I wasn't running a professional business. I was following a practitioner model, very different. And I had a clinic in Marylebone, and I was seeing clients back to back, and I was always the highest charging practitioner because I didn't look at what anyone else charged. I was just like, no, this is what I'm worth. And as you know from your work, it meant that more people came.
Resonated at that level.
More people came. And and then in like year one, it was really interesting because I remember my friend was doing a talk at Shoreditch House. And for those of you that are international, Soho House is a members club. It's global. We have a selection of them in London. And I was at my friend's talk. Oh no, she said to me, would you come and share your story about ayahuasca? And I was like, definitely. Because I was in that rebel phase where no one wanted to talk about ayahuasca, but I was like, this is plant medicine all the way. Life. I was just like, I don't care if it's illegal. I'm going to talk about it, whatever. So I was talking about it and my story and stuff. And the Shoreditch House people were like, the events people, and they came up to me after and they were like, oh my God, we love you so much. Can you come and do regular events for our members? And I was like, on what?
Oh my God. But do you know what I love about But what I love about this, Jodie, and this is something I teach my guys all the time, is you were so in the moment. And I think most people nowadays, they get so paralyzed in fear because they kind of know where they want to go, but they don't know how they're going to get there. But what I'm hearing, which I'm loving, is you were just so in the present moment, listening to the advice that was given in that moment. And you kind of just kept taking action and steps forward and forward. And of course, that's what happens. You know, the more we engage in the process, the easier it gets because people turn up, you get guided to the right place. So if you're listening to this podcast, please, listen to what Jodie was describing because she's so in her flow. And as you said, now, best year ever.
I think it's amazing as well to go into this with a level of naivety, that childlike curiosity, because it really does keep it fresh and innocent. And I think what started happening to me was like, because I'd worked in advertising, and I'd worked with some really big brands, suddenly like the lead, I don't know, the head of retail at Nike would be at my Shoreditch House talk, right? And I'd be talking about I don't know, being in the corporate world and teaching tools. And he'd be like, right, you need to come and teach my leadership team all of this. And then I would get employed to do that. And I did, you know what, I was thinking about this just earlier today. I did a lot of corporate work when I first started my wellbeing business. There was a lot, because if you think about it, this is 5.5 years ago, nearly 6 years ago. Yeah, however long, it was a long time ago. Yeah, it was 6 years ago. Yeah, well, just 5.5, nearly 6 years ago. No one was talking about meditation in London. No one was I'm talking about the mainstream. I was never really a spiritual person for the spiritual people. I was always a spiritual person for the mainstream. That was always how I've been pitched. Corporate. So yeah, going and doing I didn't have a strategy. I wasn't ringing up HR departments saying, right, what's your training and development budget? Can I come in and do some sessions? I was just it was just happening. So basically, I was literally about 1.5 years in the leadership office at HQ of Nike, standing there, delivering a talk all about, I don't know, improvement, searching inside yourself, all those kind of it was just insane. I was thinking oh my gosh. And that just kept happening. And then what's interesting is that sooner or later your vibration shifts and that kind of work is just not you anymore. And then it's okay. And if I looked at that, I was on a retainer with a massive media agency, right? This is all those years ago. They were paying me something crazy. It was me basically putting forward my fee. But I don't even know what, it was insane. I was taking away, they were paying me a monthly fee a weekly fee at the end of the month. And it was thousands and thousands of pounds. And I'm oh my gosh, that's crazy because, when I let that go, obviously my income did struggle a little bit because I was then, right, I'm just going to focus on the one-to-ones. And I didn't understand really how to make that revenue stream profitable at that time. And but I think the message there is when it doesn't feel right, you've just got to let go of it. As glamorous as it sounds to work with Nike and Estee Lauder and Clarins and Swarovski crystals and all these massive retail companies and whatever else, if it's not it's not in your alignment and it makes you feel resistant, Like, yeah, it's time to let go of it. So I'm not positioning myself as a corporate speaker anymore. I have to say, like, I'm much more of a presenter. Like, having to be a podcast presenter has been interesting because, you know, I've kind of been and I might trigger people by saying this, but it's fine. I've been like the star on the stage. I've been like the talent, right? And then going into a space of support, especially when I trained as a coach, it was so interesting because I realized I'd always been that role in the therapeutic world because I was in the therapeutic world for a bit, and then being a coach. But it was really interesting. Yeah, it's just all the skills that I've learned recently, I guess, have given me a sense of wholesomeness. So I understand things. I understand the polarity of things now.
I think for people listening, you know, you're a beautiful example of somebody who's literally, I call it following your breadcrumbs, because you've kind of followed the breadcrumbs, and as you've evolved, your purpose evolves. And that's one of the things I talk to my audience about, is that as we evolve, as we change, as like you said, those things weren't fulfilling you anymore, you didn't get trapped by the money. You didn't get scared and say, I've got to stay here because I'm too scared to move. You just listened to who you are and what your being was telling you. And I think I love this conversation, Jodie, because so many people get so trapped in what they feel they should be doing, or they get trapped in their fear. And you're just a great example who's someone who intuitively has tuned into what they're supposed to be doing and listens, because we get messages, mind, body, spirit, and soul. And you're just totally in tune with that. And you're not scared to take the action. And consequently, you're doing your dharma, as the way I would like to describe it.
Oh, hey, listen, I am scared, Kitty. That's really important to say. I do get scared, right? I get scared.
But you still listen and do it.
I do. And it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to feel the fear. It's really okay. Like, because of course I get afraid, for sure. She's a human. You. I get it. I'm a human, definitely.
Yeah. But no, absolutely. I think, you know, we were talking about this before we came on air, like we're all human. But I think, you know, the message there is that not to get paralyzed by it, and still to kind of keep looking, keep searching, and keep being in the game. And of course now, you know, naturally what's happening is you're doing this podcast, and, you know, a different side of you is being developed, which is beautiful. And
exactly.
And you're loving it. I can just tell, like, you know,
sure.
Wonderful. So just a bit of advice for our listeners. You know, we've kind of just talked about it there, but somebody listening to this podcast, they've got an idea, you know, they're very inspired by the wellness scene. Maybe they're a yoga teacher, but they don't know how to start and what to do next. Like, what's your advice for them?
Oh, come and join my Get in Flow program. So really, you know, first of all, you know, it's been really interesting for me because, I have my own business coach, as I'm sure you do, because when we're coaches, we see the value in having a coach, right? I mean, I couldn't do without it. I've got a business coach. I've got a big support system around me. I have people that really help me expand. And I think there's only so much that you can do on your own. I would say there's only so much you can do on your own. Like, there's only a certain amount of meditating and journaling and tapping and goal setting. And, you know, in all of those things are amazing, and scripting and all the amazing practices that we all have are incredibly powerful. And there's such great things at building the foundations, for sure. But if you're ready to take action on something, if you have an idea, or even if you just have a niggle that you're not supposed to be where you are, and you're ready to kind of move forward, you know, I would really like, you know, having a coach or having someone around you, investing in yourself in some way, investing in yourself, because when you invest in yourself, the return on your investment, especially when you make that into your own improvement, it can be really huge. And so, you know, take action by like getting someone on your team to really help you. And if you're in a corporate role right now and you're not really sure about what your idea is or what your vision and mission is, and that's very, very normal not to be sure of that. So it's totally fine. I would look at, you know, employing somebody, having someone on your team that can really support you and help you expand, you know, because as you know, Kitty, more than most people, you know, we're so heavily programmed, and we have these stories and belief systems, and, you know, we have these limitations going on. And so we could have so much good intention, and we could really, really want this. Yet if there's a part of us that says, well, you're not good enough to do that, then that will keep us in a space of sabotage and in a space of holding ourselves back. So it's really important to have these people around you. And it's so funny, Kitty, because if you'd have asked me this last year, I probably wouldn't have given you that answer. Because I've always had a team around me, but
sure.
It was until I started working with a business coach that everything really started making, my own coach, that everything started making sense.
Yeah, I think it's so important, isn't it? Because, especially when we're coaching others, I wouldn't be without mine, because it's so important. Like, you need that place, you need that safe space, you need that person to bounce off. Everybody, we're all at different levels, we're all evolving. So it's really important that you find a team, a community. That's the other thing I'd probably say as well, is get around and empower a community, because that's so powerful. Like, we totally end up becoming like the people we surround ourselves with. So from a community perspective.
For sure. I mean, you've probably done the same. I've got like 3 communities within my business, and, a community for each of my programs, really. And, they are so incredibly powerful, especially the Get in Flow community. It's just so powerful. And, I don't know if you were the same, Kitty, but I'm from a line of fiercely independent entrepreneurial women. So they've all had their own businesses. Okay. They've all been really successful, but they've all done it on their own, right? So me stepping into a space of really wanting to expand and being faced with the ancestral programs that say, you have to do it all on your own. And like, you're so much stronger if you do it on your own, and you're quite weak if you ask for support. Stepping into that space and really, I've had to consciously understand, like reprogram myself in terms of understanding the value of the community, because I didn't get right. communities for so long. I just didn't get them. And I think still in the UK, so many people struggle with that idea of having a community. Oh, what? You have a community online? How does that work then? And it's opening up now. It's so common for us in the coaching industry to talk about that. But I think now more than ever, it's definitely opening up now. More people are setting them up, and we're realizing the importance of them. So yeah, absolutely agree with everything you said.
Well, we are in the earth stage in Chinese medicine. We're in an earth stage in the world's development. So it is all about communities. Everything is about having a community. So yeah, we will definitely start to see more and more communities popping up everywhere. But Jody, how can people find you? They've listened to this podcast. They're keen to connect with you. How can they find you?
Awesome. So they can find me on Instagram at Jody Shield, JODYSHIELD. You can head to my website, which is jodyshield.co.uk. Please go and check out She's Electric. The episodes are on iTunes. The links are on my website or on Instagram. And yeah, I hope to see you around at some stage. I know I will do.
And I can highly recommend Jodie's podcast. I listened to the first episode with Ella Mills, and it's just like this conversation. It's beautifully open, it's authentic, and it was fascinating to hear Ella talk so openly about her life and, as you said, her success and some of the kind of stuff that goes on in her head. She, again, everybody's normal, everybody's human. So yes, I definitely empower you to check out the podcast. But Jodie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kitty. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the listeners for listening to me as well, to us. Thank you.
Fantastic. We'll see you next week again with another amazing guest. Bye-bye. This podcast was sponsored by my Do Your Dharma course. Create a life so good that you pinch yourself. This 8-week online course demystifies Dharma and shows you how to tune in to why you're really here. Go to www.kittytalks.com/do your Dharma.